Solace was a white titan drifting through contested space, lights dimmed to conserve power, its hull painted with massive red crosses visible from kilometers away. The ship carried no weapons, no shields, only lives. Human, alien, wounded, dying. Solace took them all. Inside, the hum of medical equipment blended with soft music, the scent of antiseptic and recycled air forming a quiet cocoon in a region torn by war. A nurse named Elena was tending to a Zoran child whose forearms trembled with fever. The child coughed once, and Elena smiled gently, pressing a cool pack against its forehead. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, voice full of practiced certainty. The crew had done this for months. Triage, surgery, comfort. War had rules. Even the worst enemies respected the cross. That's what they believed. Then came the flash. It didn't make a sound. One moment, the stars shimmered around Solace in perfect stillness. The next, a lance of pure energy speared through the medical bay, vaporizing half the deck and all within it, including Elena, the child, and 37 others. Across the ship, alarms howled. Doctors screamed orders. Automated systems tried to stabilize atmosphere and gravity, but it was pointless. A second plasma bolt struck amidships. Emergency pods jettisoned, only to be torn apart by precision laser fire moments later. There were no warnings, no demands, no threats. In just over 3 minutes, THS Solace was reduced to silent, tumbling wreckage. Twisted metal, charred bodies, shattered medbots. Floating in the void, only the shattered remains of a children's ward identifier still blinked faintly. Then a final torpedo detonated at the center mass, tearing the ship into unrecognizable fragments. A Zoran patrol fleet transmitted nothing, offered no explanation, and turned away as if the act was a routine cleanup. Their war logs labeled the incident as combat anomaly, civilian medical vessel misidentified. They expected Earth to protest. The footage leaked within hours, first across the inner Terran systems, then to the outer colonies, and finally to the galactic nets. No embellishment, no narration, just the raw security feeds. Children in medbeds incinerated mid-laugh, doctors shielding alien patients with their own bodies, escape pods exploding one by one. Earth didn't scream. Earth didn't march in the streets. It went quiet. The High Council convened in Old Geneva under blackout protocols. No press, no diplomats, just Terrans from every nation, background, and belief. No one raised their voice. President Ian simply stood, eyes dark-rimmed with exhaustion, and placed a holo display at the center of the table. It looped the last 10 seconds of the Solace feed. She let it play twice before speaking. "Protocol 47, she said. The room stood in silence. It had not been invoked in over 2 centuries. Not since the genocide of Ira IV. Not since Earth learned that some acts did not merit diplomacy, only consequence. The vote passed unanimously in 42 seconds. On Mars, a command buried 3 kilometers under the Tharsis Ridge unlocked. Retired generals were pulled from cryo. Strategic AI cores, long dormant, booted up. One by one, Black Flag protocols activated across Terran space. The 7th Terran Armada began assembling. They called it the Fleet of Fury. Veteran crews, abandoned research stations, trade missions, and even peacekeeping efforts to return to service. Civilian engineers welded warplates onto dreadnoughts. Terraforming ships converted into mobile foundries. Orbital yards lit up like stars as production lines ran nonstop. No slogans, no speeches, no anthems. Humanity moved with purpose. By the 4th day, 217 ships were ready, each one loaded with full AI war councils, zero-latency drone networks, and gravity-based weaponry capable of splitting moons. The flagship, TNS Revenant, loomed at the front of the fleet. She had no paint, no insignia, just a carbon black hull and a reactor that pulsed like a heartbeat. The media speculated. The Galactic Council issued inquiries. Earth ignored them. A single transmission was sent to the Zoran Dominion. This was not a mistake. This was murder. You fired on mercy. You executed peace. There will be no negotiation. There will only be justice. The Dominion offered no reply. They believed Earth wouldn't risk galactic outrage. that the humans would bluster, threaten, maybe fire a shot across the bow. They're misunderstood. For a species known for emotion, Earth had learned when not to speak. As the fleet mobilized, Earth citizens watched in stillness. Families didn't cry on camera. They didn't send tearful farewells. They stood at the edge of launch decks, eyes forward, hands raised, not in salute, but in promise. The dead from solace weren't buried. There were no remains. Instead, their names were laser inscribed on every hull plate of the Fleet of Fury. Tens of thousands of letters, shining like stars against the black. Doctors, nurses, children, even the Zorant patients that had been in Earth's care, all listed as martyrs to a lie. One ship had carried peace. Now, 200 carried fire. On the seventh day, the Fleet of Fury jumped. No press release, no public countdown, just a shift in gravitational readings across the solar system as every drive spun up and space bent under Terran propulsion. Earth didn't watch them go. Earth watched the stars, waiting for silence to be broken. And somewhere, deep in Zorn space, alarms were beginning to sound. Not because of what had arrived, but because they were beginning to understand this was not revenge. This was human justice. And it was already far too late to stop it. The Zorant Dominion didn't notice the first incursion. The Fleet of Fury arrived using quantum tunnel drives, experimental Terran tech that bent folded space around a mass shadow and exited inside enemy territory with no detectable energy signature until it was too late. They bypassed every sensor net, every patrol beacon, every defense grid optimized for traditional war. The first strike came at 2:37 Zorn Standard Time. Kael'Tor Relay Station, their primary military comm hub, responsible for coordinating fleet movement across 8 systems, went dark. Not damaged, not jammed, gone. 17,000 personnel, vaporized in 11.2 seconds by a precisely calculated kinetic impact, an untraceable tungsten rod. Dropped from light hours away at a fractional percent below light speed. No heat signature, no warning, just pure velocity. The station imploded. No distress signals, just a growing debris cloud and one Terran message beam on all open channels. Justice for Solace. Zorn Command dismissed it as a guerrilla act. Earth had never struck so deep, so fast. They underestimated again. By the time they dispatched a scout fleet to investigate, 3 more installations were ash, military outposts, weapons factories, even a listening station hidden beneath an asteroid belt. The humans didn't just destroy them, they erased them. No salvage, no survivors, no mercy. The Fleet of Fury was not just a military response. It was a surgical eradication machine. Each ship operated under hybrid command. Human captains working alongside advanced AI strategists, not the sanitized kind, not bound by ethical subroutines. These were Black Level War AIs, Eidolon-class minds designed for total strategic dominance. They didn't argue. They didn't hesitate. They calculated only one outcome, absolute finality. TNS Revenant led the charge, accompanied by her sister ships, Vigil, Omen, and Grey Ward. All vessels bore no markings, no lights, just cold hulls and silent intent. Every strike followed a brutal efficiency. Power grid shut down in nanoseconds, orbital defenses overridden and turned inward. Infrastructure mapped, prioritized, and obliterated with emotionless precision. Terran battle doctrine had evolved. This wasn't a traditional campaign. It was a message written in orbital fire. On Earth, the public received no updates, no live streams, no celebratory headlines. They didn't need them. They knew exactly what their fleet was doing. Terran civilians continued their lives in silence, lighting memorial candles beneath the stars, standing beneath the night sky as each star winked and flared in distant bursts. Not out of celebration, but out of duty. Every act of destruction by the Fleet of Fury followed the same moral parameters. Civilian structures were scanned and spared unless housing military assets. Hospitals, temples, archives, and sanctuaries were never touched. Zorant medical ships encountered were allowed to pass unchallenged. But the moment a warship was identified, it ceased to exist. Zorant soldiers began to refuse deployment. Commanders found themselves unable to hold ranks. One crewman was quoted in a leaked intercept. "They don't talk. They don't threaten. They just arrive, and then we're dead." Even the Dominion's elite armada, the Flameclaw fleet, was reduced to wreckage in under 40 minutes. Their flagship tried to escape into hyperspace. The Terrans predicted its trajectory and launched a gravitic tether that ripped its engines apart mid-transition. The ship returned in pieces, half in real space, half in something else. Terror gripped Zoran space. But it wasn't just fear of death. It was fear of how the Terrans killed. They didn't conquer. They didn't occupy. They simply found every responsible command node, every chain of authority that approved or ignored the hospital ship attack, and they deleted it. The Terrans launched Operation Chainbreaker. 93 named targets, fleet admirals, rear commanders, intelligence officers, even civilian administrators who voted for wartime escalation. Over the course of 6 days, 82 were confirmed neutralized. They weren't assassinated through espionage. They were systematically eliminated mid-broadcast, mid-command, mid-transport, cut down by precision strikes from stealth drones, railgun satellites, orbital lasers timed to millisecond gaps in planetary shields. One general, Yarn Drasek, had taken refuge deep underground on a fortified moon base. It didn't matter. The fleet of Fury dropped a bunker buster composed of a collapsing micro-singularity. The moon still exists, but its core now rotates 4 seconds out of sync. The message was always the same. We remember Solace. Zorant media tried to control the narrative. They called Earth unstable, unhinged, bloodthirsty. But their own civilians leaked images. Burned out military bunkers left untouched alongside refugee shelters that hadn't even lost power. Human messages translated in every tongue. We do not punish the innocent. Galactic empires watched, silent and afraid. Earth had always been considered restrained, patient. Their diplomats were calm. Their military often late to act, and quick to stand down when terms were met. Now they saw the other side. The side built not on conquest or ideology, but cold, deliberate retribution. A Terran admiral once said, "If you attack a human fleet, we respond. If you attack a Terran city, we retaliate. But if you fire on a Terran sanctuary, we will burn your memory from the stars." The quote resurfaced now, and Zoran Command finally understood. This wasn't diplomacy. This was a fleet of Fury executing a singular mandate. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't offer negotiations. There was no path back, only through. As the 9th Zoran Command node was annihilated, panic finally reached their capital. Fleet-wide communiques issued desperate lockdowns. Advisors pleaded for a statement of regret. Some factions within Zoran's leadership began preparing confessions, hoping to buy mercy. But they were too late. By the time Zoran issued a call for ceasefire, the fleet of Fury had already chosen their next targets. Not because Earth couldn't stop, but because it wouldn't. Not until every life tied to the destruction of Solace was accounted for. Not until the galaxy understood. You can break treaties. You can dispute borders. But you do not fire on a Terran hospital ship. Not unless you're ready to meet the fleet that follows. By the 3rd week, the Zorant Dominion was no longer fighting a war. It was surviving one. Their outer systems had gone dark, cut off from comms, energy grids, and supply chains. The fleet of Fury hadn't occupied them. They had simply dismantled them, layer by layer, until there was nothing left but cold rock and failed infrastructure. No ground invasions. No parades of conquest. Only surgical extinction of capacity. The Terrans had mapped every starport, depot, and relay station decades ago, quietly, patiently. Now that data guided their fury like a scalpel, making each strike feel like prophecy. The Zoran began seeing patterns, connections, intelligence so deep and precise it felt inhuman. Their leaders assumed Earth would act emotionally, lash out, lose control, seek symbolic targets. They were wrong. Earth had evolved past that. The Terrans fought like machines, but not cold ones. Efficient, relentless, personal. Zoran Prime, the Dominion's throne world, hadn't been touched. Not yet. The High Command had bunkered deep into the planet's core, protected by planetary shields powered by a fusion web the size of continents. In their arrogance, they believed no force could break through. So they waited, desperate to interpret Earth's pattern, to anticipate the moment Revenant would appear in orbit. But Earth had never aimed for the throne. The third wave of strikes revealed the real strategy: erasure of institutional memory. Humanity wasn't just punishing individuals. It was dismantling the idea of Zorant militarism itself. Galactic historians, strategic analysts, propaganda architects, cultural military theorists, any voice that ever glorified aggression or justified Dominion supremacy, eliminated. Orbital archives incinerated. AI data clusters reduced to scorched silicon. Educational holospheres overwritten with simple messages in every major language. War without honor has no future. Entire generations of Zorn students awoke to find their schooling system scrubbed of centuries of doctrine. In its place, a single Terran ledger appeared, listing the names and ranks of every victim aboard the Solace, from the smallest child to the oldest nurse. One line underlined it all: they tended your wounded. You burned them. Some Zorn protested. Some tried to organize a rebellion against their own Dominion overlords. They were silenced, not by Earth, but by the remaining power structures desperate to cling to control. The Dominion fractured. Half of their border fleets went rogue, transmitting asylum pleas to Terran space. They promised intelligence, surrender, even reparations, anything to avoid what they now believed to be inevitable. But the Terrans never responded. Those fleets were marked, cataloged, and bypassed, not forgiven, merely irrelevant. The Fleet of Fury had moved beyond diplomacy. They were not conquerors. They had no interest in ruling broken systems. Their only purpose was to ensure Zorinth would never again wield the means or the will to strike first. In one system, a Zorinth colony known for weapons development surrendered completely, shut down power, evacuated, left messages on every frequency begging for clemency. Terran drones arrived silently, confirmed the shutdown, scanned every structure. Then they left. The colony remained untouched. Their governor wept on live broadcast, overcome not by survival, but by the unbearable contrast. They could have destroyed us, he whispered, but they only destroy what chooses war. The galaxy was watching now. From the crystalline empires of the Anthali to the cyber courts of the Karev Unity, ancient civilizations convened emergency sessions, not to stop Earth, but to understand it. No one had seen this form of power before. Not total war, not genocide, not scorched Earth. It was precision extinction. Each act exact, targeted, never collateral. Zorinth families hiding in neutral zones were untouched. Hospitals and shelters were left fully powered. Even trade ships carrying non-military goods were allowed to flee. But any vessel traced to war, by funding, command structure, or signature, was annihilated without warning. Even Zorinth began calling it by the same name. The Vow of Fire. Some Terran captains had begun engraving it onto their hulls. Zorinth diplomats sent desperate messages to the Galactic Council, begging them to intervene. They received one final reply from Earth, transmitted through secure council channels. Text only. No image. No voice. Your codes of war are broken. Your honor was hollow. You struck the cross. We are the answer. When the last architect of the Solace massacre falls, we will stop, not before. The council did not respond, not because they didn't care, but because they knew nothing they said could sway Earth. Because, secretly, they understood Earth was right. Every empire had its sacred space, temples, neutral planets, memorial moons. Everyone respected them. The Solace had been one of them. To fire on a sanctuary was to spit in the face of every code the galaxy pretended to uphold. And Earth did not pretend. A Terran proverb resurfaced in forums and quiet embassies. We speak little, but we remember everything. By now, half the Dominion's military leadership was gone. Entire bloodlines erased from record. Research stations sterilized. Black sites dismantled down to their atomic foundations. The most wanted man in Terran Command intelligence was a Zorinth admiral named Caliph, or one of the original architects of the combat anomaly that had justified Solace's destruction. He had gone dark after the second week. It didn't matter. Terran tracking networks didn't sleep. He was found disguised on a freighter in neutral space, using stolen bioskin and encrypted identity markers. A single message was transmitted to his ship. Elena Rodriguez, pediatric nurse. Room 17, Deck 5. Seconds later, a small, invisible kinetic dart penetrated the hull. No explosion, no fire, just one dead man and a drifting freighter. The ship was left intact, a silent tomb for the last of the guilty. After that, Zoran Prime finally broke. The Dominion High Council released a full, unredacted confession across all channels. They admitted fault. They named the commanders who gave the orders. They offered reparations, abdications, and unconditional surrender. But Earth didn't acknowledge it. Not yet, because one final name still remained unaccounted for. And the Fleet of Fury was already moving. The last name was Lord Marshal Rethvoren, architect of Dominion military doctrine, author of the preemptive annihilation model, the man who signed the final authorization to fire on Solace. He had not fled. He had not gone dark. He sat in the fortified throne chamber on Zoran Prime, surrounded by redundant energy fields, cloaked by gravitational sheaths, protected by 30 layers of kinetic and thermal shielding, orbiting fleets numbered in the hundreds. Not for the people, only for him. He didn't speak. He didn't issue orders. He waited. The High Council begged him to run. Civil governors offered escape paths, hidden vaults, emergency gates. But Voran remained seated, unmoving, draped in ceremonial command armor, watching the skies above with his own eyes. He knew Earth would come, and he knew they would come last for him. The Fleet of Fury did not storm Zoran Prime. They didn't need to. The blockade arrived at 0400 hours, 8 Terran dreadships, spaced equidistantly across orbital vectors. They made no demands, no siege formation, no artillery warm-up. They just watched. All outgoing Dominion vessels were scanned and marked. Medical? Passed. Civilian? Ignored. Military? Removed instantly, zero hesitation. The blockade was absolute. And yet, Zoran Prime functioned. Power stayed online. Water flowed. Lights worked. Earth gave them everything they needed to see. To know, the final name had not yet been crossed out. Lord Marshal Voran was alone. The people began to understand what was coming. Not fire, not invasion, but judgment. Every system Earth had destroyed had followed a pattern, one that spared the innocent, even when surrounded by war. That restraint had given weight to their fury. It wasn't chaos. It was law, unspoken, undeniable, a law carved in consequence. For 5 days, the Terran blockade held position. No move, no escalation, just silence and presence. A reminder in orbit of what Voran's signature had summoned. Then, on the 6th day, Revenant descended. She didn't breach orbit. She didn't signal the surface. She just aligned over the capital, where Voran waited. One beam of red light projected from her underbelly, focused tight like a line drawn in the air. It traced a single path down to the throne chamber, a corridor, a judgment walk. Terran protocol was clear. Only the guilty would be punished. But Voran had a choice. They always gave a choice. He took it. Reth Voran rose from his throne. Alone. No guards. No armor, but the one he wore when he gave the order. And he walked the path. Civilians watched from rooftops, silent and breathless. No one dared stop him. No one saluted. Even in the deepest corners of Zoran society, they understood this wasn't surrender. This was consequence given form. Voran reached the end point beneath the red beam. He stood beneath the burning hull of the Revenant, exposed, unshielded. He looked up. No words passed. No weapons fired. No dramatic speech. Just silence. And then, from the void above, a single projectile descended. So fast, so precise, it barely distorted the air. No scream. No impact. Just a flash. And where Rev Voran had stood, there was nothing. Not dust. Not ash. Nothing. In orbit, the beam shut off. The Revenant turned. Across Terran channels, a single phrase broadcast at every known system. encrypted with Earth seal. Justice concluded. Solace remembered. Then the fleet of Fury vanished. Not into hyperspace. Not with fanfare. They simply left. No occupation. No demand for tribute. No Terran flag raised over the ruins. The galaxy held its breath. Zorant Prime was still there, physically intact. But the Dominion was gone. It had died not with a bang, but with a ledger completed. One by one, the Terran dreadships entered silence. Not shutdown. Silence. A deep sleep between stars, parked in the black outskirts of the Sol system, where no empire dared venture again. They didn't need to guard Earth anymore. Their message had done the work. The galaxy understood. Humanity was not the most aggressive race, not the most expansive, not the most technologically advanced, but it was the most absolute. The only species that believed restraint was not weakness, but a vow that, once broken, invited a reckoning deeper than any war. The Terrans returned to their lives. No medals were awarded, no celebrations televised. Instead, across Earth and her colonies, lights were dimmed for 1 hour, each citizen lighting a candle for the 472 souls aboard the Solace. Nurses, engineers, volunteers, children, names whispered aloud, not just in grief, but in respect, in honor of a promise kept. Some historians tried to catalog the campaign. They failed, because the Terran War record had only one entry for the entire operation. Fleet deployed, operation concluded, objective, remembrance. There were no monuments built for what the Fleet of Fury did. They didn't need one, because across the stars, every empire now had one unshakable understanding. You do not fire on a Terran sanctuary, because Earth will not send diplomats. It will not offer a second chance. It will send a fleet. And when the fleet arrives, it will not shout. It will not ask. It will answer.